Wait until your father gets home.
You just wait, mister, until your father gets home.
How I loathed to hear those words, and heard them I did, practically every day of my life. My stepmother would scream them at me for some infraction that I'd done. I hated her. She was a witch. I never knew my mother. She died while giving birth to me. I only know her through photographs and videos that my father showed me when I turned 6 years old. I'd always asked about her, but he had only given me blank stares and told me not to worry, that she was fine where she was at. She had been a beauty, with long brown hair and soulful eyes that seemed to look out at the various photos and hold me. There were times that I could feel her arms around me, holding me in a motherly embrace. Until I turned 12 years old, that is. My father had worked hard to achieve the status in which I had grown accustomed to. Money had no longer become a problem. The problem was how to spend it. We lived in a rather luxurious apartment right in the heart of downtown. Easy walking distance to the finest shops, restaurants and theatres. I grew up watching the stars of Broadway perform their various roles. I saw the latest movies on one of the largest screens in the country. Our own media room boasted the latest in technology on video and sound. I attended the best school and excelled in my studies. The teachers always praised me for my work, and my friends listened to the advice that I gave. I had become quite popular by the time I was 14. Everything was perfect, until the witch entered our lives. "Come here, Tom, and meet your new mother," my father said.
Hello, Thomas. I'm sure that we shall become great friends,
Glenda told me, which I knew would never happen. She was tall, much like my father, and at least 15 years younger. Her body looked like it had come from a fitness magazine, toned and tanned. Her long hair waved naturally, no matter what the condition of the weather might be. Her makeup was always perfect. Her clothes were always form-fitting and carried the latest brand names and styles. Do you know, I often wondered what she saw in my father. A slightly overweight middle-aged man of success with a balding problem and a moustache that never quite grew in the same direction. Other than the millions of dollars that he was worth, I couldn't see one redeeming value that my father had that would have attracted such an elegant woman. The word gold digger had crossed my mind on many occasions. What she didn't know was that the money was mine. All of it. Lock, stock and barrel. I had planned, double-checking everything so that by my 16th birthday I would inherit the estate while my father, the murderer of my mother, would be lying in a box 6 feet under the ground. Oh, yes, he killed my mother. On the night of my birth, they were on their way to dinner when he swerved for no apparent reason, hitting a guardrail and crashing into the trees beyond. My mother went into early labour, and by the time the ambulance arrived, I was making my way into the world. She died a few hours later. My father was unharmed. The police made a report and I grew up in an incubator for the next 6 months. Yes, he killed my mother. I know that there are those around me who will say it was just an accident, that he did not mean to swerve the car off the road. I have read all the reports. It is amazing what you can find online nowadays. He killed her, and I have made plans to kill him. At least, that was what I thought. Until the witch, Glenda of the long hair, showed up and completely ruined my plans. "So what do you think of your new mother?" my father asked me one day. I knew that I should play along. "She's okay, I guess," I heard my 13-year-old voice say. The look that my father had given me belied the fact that he did not believe what I was saying either. "Oh, she really is trying," he said. "Maybe you could give her a little leeway." The money is mine, I thought, not hers.
Yeah, I'll try,
I told him. However, from then on, things got worse between Glenda and me.
You just wait until your father gets home,
were the words that I heard every day. It did not matter what I did, whether it was spilling a drink on the carpet, even though I cleaned it up, or getting a B on some exam. It was always the same.
Wait till your father gets home.
My plans had to be carried out a little earlier than expected. I'd been waiting until I was 16, but after 2 years of hearing those same words, watching as she manipulated him into signing papers after papers, giving away my money to some worthless charity, I could wait no longer. It was fitting that the car careened off the road in the same spot where my mother had met her demise. His body crashed through the windshield due to a faulty seatbelt, nearly cutting him in half. His face smashed into the tree, obliterating all of his features. The funeral was a closed casket affair. The money would now be mine. Until I heard the will read.
Now that's not fair,
I yelled at the attorney. I saw the faintest smile on Glenda's face as she was informed that the entire estate was hers now, on the condition that she care for me as her own son. I was to get a small allowance until I was 21, at which time I would receive $1 million annuity, which I would be able to collect on when I turned 35. All the planning, all the worrying that I had done was for nothing, and all because of that wicked witch Glenda.
Oh, don't worry, Thomas. I will see to it that you get what is coming to you,
she told me as we left the attorney's office. I had to make my plans yet again, being careful not to slip up again. Did she have a will? According to my father's will, if anything were to happen to her, then the estate would revert to me. It was clear what I had to do, and began to plan that very night. The first accident was really just a test. She'd fallen down a long staircase as planned, but had only a few bruises. The fine piece of fishing line that I had stretched across the upper landing had done its job nicely. Almost.
Oh, wait until your father gets home,
she said, her eyes boring into me as she brushed herself off and made her way to the den. I remember when my father gave her the den. At one time it had been my playroom, but once Glenda had moved in, Father had moved everything that was mine out of it. Glenda brought in boxes and boxes of God knows what, and, quite strangely, had Father put a lock onto the door, which he promptly did. I spent more than a few nights wondering what she was doing behind that locked door. I had made several attempts to open it, but to no avail. The second accident took place a week later, when the brakes gave out on her car. I waited for the knock on the door of the police informing me that there had been a terrible accident and that Glenda was dead.
Wait until your father gets home,
Glenda said as she paid the taxi driver.
The car was in the shop. Lucky for me, the brakes gave out at a stoplight, so it didn't roll very far. I only swerved onto the curb. My, Thomas, you should really be nicer to me. That's okay. Just wait until your father gets home.
But he isn't coming home, you bitch. He's dead. Do you hear me? D-E-A-D! Dead! I screamed. Glenda turned to me just before heading toward that locked door in the den. Her face was a blank mask of emotion, but her eyes were narrow slits of hate as she said,
Wait until your father gets home.
With that, she opened the door to the den, stepped in and locked it behind her. A week later, I found out how right I was about Glenda being a witch.
I'm going to the store, Thomas. Do you want anything?
I didn't answer. I was waiting for the explosion of the bomb that I had planted in her car, but there was nothing. Perhaps later that day I would get the visit from the police. I wandered downstairs. After making myself a sandwich, I made my way toward the media room, passing by the den. The door was open. For the first time, the door was actually open. And not just a crack or two, but officially bona fide wide open. I peered inside. The altar at the far end of the room gave me chills. A picture of my father hung on the wall. Below it were candles burning, an open book, and several knives and cauldrons with something boiling inside them. I looked on the floor and saw the painted circled pentagram drawn neatly and perfectly, just like everything else about Glenda. I wanted to throw up, but I couldn't stop myself from approaching the altar and looking down at the book, seeing the passage that it was turned to. I had never heard her come in. I never heard the front door open or the footsteps as I approached the den. I only heard her voice.
I told you to wait until your father came home. He's waiting for you in the living room. I think he wants to have a little chat,
she said, menace dripping from each word. I'm still standing in the room, surrounded by objects that Glenda uses in her craft. I'd read the police report on my father's death, knowing how mangled the body was and the closed coffin at the funeral.
Wait until your father gets home,
she had told me over and over again. Now he was home, and I am very afraid. Epilogue. The butler did it.